and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Your Friend David. Your Friend David is a show in which I openly discuss my own personal issues or anything else on my mind in hopes that it will encourage you, the viewer, to feel more comfortable opening up about your own issues. This week I brought with me my friend Kevin to discuss this week's topic, which would be gun control. We're not going to dive too deep into the events that transpired in Las Vegas as far as numbers go, people dead. You've already seen what's been broadcast on the news and what's been shared around social media, and we're here to discuss gun control and what we can do to fix this problem we have in this country so these events don't keep happening. Now, the reason I thought about inviting you on here out of all my friends is because I know you lean pretty far left, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree.
Me, I'm kind of centric, but I kind of lean, I wouldn't say lean, I kind of steer right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would agree.
So, when I first asked you to come on the show, we were talking and I assumed, and that's one thing you should not do when discussing politics. Don't assume someone else's view. Make sure you discuss with them first so you have an idea of what they're thinking and not just assume, because that's how these discussions, they turn into fights and arguments.
I agree.
We're not going to do that. So I assumed right off the bat, he's just going to want to ban all guns. After an event like this, that's really I would say everybody's very emotional, very high tensed, and it's a terrible situation. But I feel like that's what these events kind of do, is people outright want to ban guns. So I assume that of you. Mal, what's your view? What's your actual view?
So, in an ideal world, a total gun ban would be great, but I don't think it's realistic, and I think there are other steps we can take before that becomes the needed step. What I would prefer is just gun control in the form of regulations on how many guns you can have, who can have guns. It's too easy to obtain literally any gun. I went on Google earlier and I found out I could just buy an AK-47 online right now.
Like a laptop off Amazon or something ridiculous.
Literally the same thing. I see people throwing around an argument about cars lately, but I don't buy it because the difference is that to get a car, the first thing you have to do is get a permit, which is a knowledge and safety test to prove that you know what you're doing operating the vehicle, and then you have to take a practical test to show that you know how to safely drive the vehicle. There's no such regulation with guns yet, and I think we need to take that step. I think we also need to take steps in terms of registering all guns. The gun show loophole needs to go away. For those of you who don't know, if you go to a gun show, you can buy a gun from a private seller without having to do any kind of background check or any kind of registration process very easily. So processes like that need to go away.
Mm-hmm.
We just need tighter enforcement, because nothing will ever stop every single tragedy, right? That's not going to happen. Someone will find a way. But you want to take the steps you can take to stop the majority. Mm-hmm. And I think this will be a step in the right direction, at least.
After you told me that, I was like, all right, so we're somewhat on the same level. Now, to call for an all-out gun ban, like Kevin said, is unrealistic. We discussed further into rifles, semi-automatic, automatic rifles. Now, automatic rifles are currently illegal, banned in the United States. This attachment he purchased was purchased legally through Amazon, and I believe I saw a bill or a piece of legislation going around this week that was already calling to make these attachments illegal, which I'm 100% for. Now, my take is, in the state of Pennsylvania, where I live, you need to go to a state store to buy liquor. Pennsylvania Fine Wine and Good Spirits, I think is the actual name of that. You need to go to a state store. Now, I was there a couple weeks ago, and they gave me a form to we're hiring for jobs, to apply now. And on this form, it took me to a .gov site to apply for this, to be just a cashier at pretty much just a Wawa for liquor. And I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of government. There's a lot of what they do. They're very bloated. I feel like they mismanage a lot of things. Now, But I think that one thing they should have control of is you should have to go to a government store, like the state store, you would go there for liquor. You should have to go there to purchase your guns from whether it be federally or state or local. But at some level, there should be government, in the sale. When you have a car, you need to get it registered and inspected once a year through, not so much inspection, but registration through the state every year. You need to that's not something that you have for guns. That is definitely something that should be.
And I think to back onto that point, even if there isn't a specific state store, to use the car analogy again, if you get a car, you still have to register it with the government immediately. They have to know immediately when you have the car and who owns it, and you have to get that renewed every couple of years. That needs to be a more strict enforcement with guns. I like your point, though, about it being some form of a state.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to get into it, something that we're not going to necessarily agree on, but semi-automatic rifles. My personal belief is that the only guns that should be for sale in the United States or that a citizen could legally own should be a handgun or a shotgun. Because if you're looking to protect yourself in your home, which is, I feel like, the primary use of most gun owners is to protect themselves, protect their home, protect their family. If someone's coming in, an intruder is coming in to break in to cause harm or to steal from you, I don't know what type of weaponry they have, but they're not walking down the street with a semi-automatic rifle. I don't think homeowners or citizens, my personal belief is that they should not be able to own these high-powered rifles. But as far as the rights that they already have as American citizens, and it's not my place to infringe on anyone else's rights, is that they should be allowed to own these weapons. And you stated that you feel like there should be a restriction on the number.
Absolutely.
And necessarily, I don't feel that way.
So I'm a very science-driven person. Currently, the CDC is not allowed to use any other funding to do gun control research, so all of this is based on other countries' findings. But in almost every other country that has stricter gun control, and in line with that, they tend to have less gun-related deaths. You have to state your reason for owning a gun. Japan specifically is a big one, where to even own the gun, you have to have a specific reason, and to carry it, you need to prove that your life is in danger. I don't really see a point where you would ever have a reason to say, I need to own this semi-automatic rifle. Would you use that for hunting? No. Would you use it for personal defense? Probably not. A handgun would be fine, especially if you're just defending your house. I don't really see a point where even if a law-abiding citizen can have it, that it couldn't be abused. And that's the thing. You want to stop anything that can be abused that heavily. We've had more mass shootings in the U.S. than any other country. This is getting ridiculous to me. So, would it be a sacrifice? Yes. Would some law-abiding citizens lose guns that they were never going to do anything to harm with? Absolutely. But I feel like this is a case where one bad apple can spoil the bunch.
Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, only because if you look at the gun-related deaths, most of these mass shootings, they're not, they weren't caused by semi-automatic rifles.
I agree with you, but can you see how easy it is for them to be caused by semi-automatic rifles?
Absolutely. The damage is way more significant, which is why personally I believe no one should own these devices, but they do, and they exist, and that's not for me to determine.
I understand your point. I just feel as though sometimes we need to group together and determine that something has to go. Cocaine used to be legal, used to be part of Coca-Cola. We grouped together and determined that needed to be restricted. I think when things become a danger to society and human life, they have to be talked about at least. And right now, it seems like the discussion is barely there, at least in terms of the government side.
And I think that's large in part by the NRA, which is an organization that should not have any type of influence on legislation that's being talked about within the government. For one organization to have that much power with money and lobbying, it hurts the citizens. It hurts the population as a whole when you have this one organization who prevented people on the no-fly list, the FBI no-fly list. They stopped they made it so that the people on that list could still have access to firearms. If you have ties with extremist organizations and you can't get on an airplane, why should you be able to purchase these firearms?
I agree. And in the same vein, recently they repealed an Obama-era piece of legislation that prevented people with severe mental handicaps from owning firearms. If the narrative is always going to be, this person wasn't mentally well, it wasn't the gun, it was the mentally unsafe person, then what incentive is there to allow the people that you're saying are too dangerous to have guns to have them? Also, not allowing the CDC to use their funding to look into gun control at bare minimum.
And that's something that should not happen.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our discussion about gun control. Kevin, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I appreciate it. You're very well spoken. You know what you're talking about, so that helps as well. You're very easy to talk to for me.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll come back on anytime you want. It's great talking to you.
Of course. Being here. Thank you. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this week's episode of Your Friend David. I appreciate it. If you liked the video, please give us a like, comment below what you like or didn't like, and please share with your friends. You can follow us on Facebook at DBW Universe, as well as Twitter and Instagram at DBW Universe. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube. Please do that. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at David Caskey, Instagram at David Caskey, and don't forget to swipe right to me on Tinder at David Caskey. Now, thank you, and have a great day.